In this podcast, I will dive into the big changes that I made in my art business. I went from hosting individual art classes on Zoom to hosting online courses and an online membership community. This is a completely different business model to what I was running before, and it's had a huge impact on how I spend my time, like how I interact with the people that I teach, and just generally on my life. And I think it might be really interesting for you to hear if you're considering hosting courses and if you want to know a little bit more about why I made these decisions and how that transition went for me. If I'm new to you, hi, my name is Irene. I'm an art teacher, illustrator for green organizations, and I paint on large canvases too. I draw and paint every single day, and I teach others to make art a habit too. This time last year, I was hosting lots of Zoom art classes. A weekly drawing class, a weekly charcoal class, a weekly color pencil class, and every week I hosted a pen drawing class too. Then I decided to change it all up. I decided to stop all my classes and change it into hosting an online community, like an online membership community, and I started to host online courses as well. In this podcast, I will dive into why I made that change, how it affected my business, what I've learned from it. Maybe there's things that I would do different, and maybe there's things that worked out really great. I'm sure that there is some learning points there, and I'm sure that lots of you are in the middle of running your own business, and maybe hosting a community or online courses is something that you're thinking about. So I'm sure there's points that you can learn from me. And I hope you find it interesting. So let's dive straight in there. Let's get started at the beginning. Let's take a few steps back and go back to when I started my business in the first place. I started making some musings in 2019, before the pandemic happened, and I used to run all my classes in person. So there was a room above a pub in Stratford in London that I could use, and this is where I run all my courses and my classes in person. Then when the pandemic hit and a lockdown happened, I took all my classes online and I started to teach on Zoom. So I used to teach watercolor classes and charcoal classes. That was the main two things that I used to teach. And I started to do them all online. This was really new to me. And as soon as we had to go into lockdown, I really quickly, within a week, learned all the different tools that I had to learn to take my business online. I made sure I had Zoom, I bought a microphone, I figured out how to use my camera to record, and really quickly I took everything online. And that worked out really great for a while. So I started to sell tickets for individual classes online, and people started to join from all over the world. So I had suddenly, from going to being a local business where I was teaching people who lived in London, I suddenly became an international business where people joined in from America, from France, from Germany, from the Netherlands, still a lot from the UK as well, but from all over the world. I've even had people join in from Greenland and from people who got up really early in the morning, living in America, got up really early in the morning to join my classes before they had their breakfast before work. So that was amazing and it worked really well, and I'm super grateful for what happened and how I made these changes. I'm quite proud of it as well. But after a while, I started to realize that in order to run these individual classes, at some point I was running 8 art classes a week, all on Zoom. In order to run all these individual classes, I had to personally be there every time I hosted a class. And I did create recordings of all these classes. These recordings are all available to watch back as part of my online community. I had all these recordings, but I didn't really utilize these recordings very well. It took me lots of time. I had to be at home in front of my computer using my camera 8 times a week. So it took a lot of time every week to create these classes. And at some point my inspiration started to wane a little bit as well. And I was really ready for some changes. I really felt I needed to change things up and to find a new challenge for myself. And I was looking for a way to scale my business without increasing the number of hours that I was working significantly. This is the thing, when you run individual classes where you have to be there in person, if you want to scale up your income, you can do that by either hosting more classes. So I could have gone from 8 classes a week to 16 classes a week, sell more tickets to different times of the day, and offer more different times to my audience and to my creatives, and scale up that way. But I just felt that that wasn't really the direction I wanted to go into. So I sat down, I made a list of things that I wanted to achieve and the direction I wanted to go into, and I decided to scale up my business by creating content and by creating courses that I could then offer to more people. Creating online courses was something that I was already thinking about for a while. I had created 2 Skillshare courses at that point, so I had experience with creating a course. And I decided to start creating courses for my own audience on my own website. The first course that I created was the Paint a Landscape in Your Own Style course. And I still really love that course. You can still buy it on my website. But I've learned so much since then. One of the things that I did in that course was pre-record everything and create all the content. And then once it was all finished, I started to sell some tickets. And that is something that I'm totally doing different right now. Nowadays, I sell tickets, I market my course, I put it out there and then see if there's interest. And then once there is interest, I start creating the course. So a much more proactive approach I have now. The reason I can do it the way I'm doing it now is because I am confident that I can create something good. I know, I've got all the tools in my own sort of personal arsenal of tools to create something wonderful, and I don't have to create it all beforehand. So I have a much more proactive approach right now. But yeah, that was the first course that I created. And then since then I have created 10 online courses. So one of them is draw pets, make pet portraits in alcohol markers and pencil. I have some portraiture courses. I have a course that is called Fill Your First Sketchbook in 30 days. So in that course we really go to the beginning of how to build an art practice. I am currently in the middle of hosting a limited color palette course. And something else that I'm changing at the moment is instead of having my courses open all year round, I open them a few times a year with a community week where people can join in, and we have we meet each other on Zoom, so there's live sessions, and there's set points in the year where people can join in and where we come together. So that's a change that I'm currently going through. But that it's all small steps, and you figure it out and you learn as you go, and you have to find a way that works well for you. So that's what I was doing. It was definitely a learning curve. So over the course of last year, I have created 10 online courses, and I've really changed my processes a lot. And I will tell you a little bit more about that later on. The reason I went to online courses was to be able to scale up my business. I was looking at how much money I was making every month and how many hours I was working. And I was also looking at what my priorities were for the next year. What are the things that I want to grow in? What are the things that I want to do more of? And how do I want to go about that? And one of the things that came out for me was that I really wanted to start creating more higher value content and courses and teachings. And because I was doing all my classes on an individual basis, every class was sort of was a beginner's class. Every class had to be at a certain level where anyone could join in. People who'd never done any of my classes before had to be able to join in. And so everyone had to be able to join in, and every individual class had to sort of start from scratch, explaining the materials. What are we going to do today? I had to pick a reference photo, so we were drawing from references. And every class had to be suitable for someone who didn't know me at all, because people just bought a ticket on Eventbrite and then had to be able to join in with that one class. So people had to be able to join in one-off classes. And I wanted to go to a model where I could go into more depth, where I could teach people more deeper skills, where people could learn how to develop their own style, where they could really gain more confidence, and also where I could explore some new techniques and materials that were going beyond just coming together for 1 hour and paint. Also, my Zoom classes are all quite short, so they were all 1.5 hours to 2 hours long, and you had to create whatever we were creating in that set of time. And I wanted to start teaching people to make pictures that might take a little bit longer, or something that you would start one day, put away for a couple of days, and then finish a few days later. So you could actually create artwork that was a bit more intricate, or that required a bit more drying time, or all these things that was really hard to do in this short amount of time of one Zoom session. I also wanted to move beyond the working from reference photos, because I think reference photos are really great, and it's really such a fantastic tool to use a reference photo when you start out making art. But I wanted people to feel, instead of sort of copying what they saw in a photo, I wanted to teach people how to go beyond that and start experimenting a bit more and feel more free to create art that sort of they felt represented their voice and their style and what they wanted to put out in the world. So I wanted to really go beyond what I was currently teaching. And the individual Zoom sessions that I was doing were not really suitable for that anymore. So I started to think of ways of how I could improve that. And the online courses was really the first step towards that. I already had an online community at the time. So I had an online community membership on my website that was free. So anyone could join in. As part of that free community, people could see all the recordings. They were part of my email list, but they could sort of tap in all the recordings of all my old Zoom sessions. And at some point last year, I decided to change that. I decided to make my online community a membership service where people have to pay a monthly membership to have access to all these old recordings, to have access to the community boards where people could talk about different materials, and also to share photos and stuff like that. And also, I decided to include monthly live sessions within the community. So community members, with my community, we come together in 3 or 4 live sessions each month, and we paint or draw, and every class has a different topic, and we experiment together. So the online community is much more about finding time for art together, having set times each month to put aside and to decide, okay, I'm going to spend time in my sketchbook, and to explore new materials and techniques, and to ask questions and to find inspiration together. So it's a slightly different result and a different goal I have with my community than I have with my courses. So in a course, for example, in a course I teach people a specific skill. So people will learn how to paint landscapes in watercolor, or they will learn how to draw a portrait of an animal in alcohol markers and color pencil. So it's a really specific skill, and people can do it in their own time, and there might be a live session, but it's a very specific thing they're learning. And they're basically learning to create art in a technique that I enjoy using. In the community, we are exploring much more, it's much freer, and there's much more opportunity to find your own style and to much more opportunity for experimentation and discovering things together as well. Because I also have sessions in the community where with materials that are quite new to me, and we try them out together and figure out how to use them and what they do. So it's a very different environment. There have been points when it was quite hard to make the change from individual classes to an online community and courses. But I've been very lucky that I have a very loyal creative community around me, and people made that transition quite happily. I think once I explained it to them, they understood and they were quite happy to do courses instead of individual classes, and a lot of people have joined the community as well. But it's quite a different proposition, and individual classes were a bit easier to market because every class you can list it separately. There's lots of places online where you can list individual classes and events on Facebook and Eventbrite and other places. So marketing wise, it was a little bit easier for me. And now I'm having my online community. It's a slightly different proposition and a different marketing technique. So that transition was quite hard. But at the same time, I think if you do something that you're passionate about and that you enjoy, and you explain to people why you do it and why that transition offers so much more value as well, in terms of value for money, but also in terms of the amount that you learn, and the quality of your teaching. My teachings really have improved since I made that transition. So I think overall, I'm super happy with this transition, and this is something that I'm exploring even further. But yes, it wasn't always easy. It's quite hard to convince people to get people to sign up to a monthly membership, because we have so many memberships in our lives already. So people are a little bit more hesitant to do that compared to signing up for an individual class. So that was definitely a transition, and this is something that I'm still learning about and that I'm still practicing. It also means that I have to make sure that my community is up to date, that I answer everyone's questions on time. I can be a little bit chaotic sometimes, so it is possible that someone asks me something in the community and that I miss it. I'm hoping that in the next year I will be able to start working with some other people who can help me with that sort of administration side of things, where or when they let me know if there's a question where I need to personally answer, that someone flags it to me and I don't forget, because that sometimes happens. Things sometimes slip between the gaps, but luckily everyone is really understanding. My creatives know that this is just me doing this business all by myself. I don't have any other help, and people are aware of that, and I think that makes them more patient as well. So the transition from individual classes to community and courses has been a really successful one. I have much more free time now. The amount of hours a week that I work is less. I have much more time to work on my own paintings. So I have a studio now where I go twice a week and work on my larger paintings, which is something that I did not have time for before. My income is roughly the same as it was before. But the hours that I'm working is less. And the things that I create now I can sell them over and over again. Like, people can join the community, and for me, it's the same amount of work if I have 10 community members. It's not exactly the same amount of work, but roughly the same amount of work if I have 10 community members, or 100 or 1,000. So for me, it's a really great way of offering higher value to a larger group of people. So in that sense, it made a lot of sense for me to do this. And I'm really enjoying it as well, which is absolutely super important. So overall, I'm really happy with the changes that I've made in my business. I don't think there's anything wrong with running individual classes on Zoom or in person. I think it is a fantastic way of connecting with people. It's such a great way of keeping flexibility as well, because you can choose how many classes you host each week. Once you have an online community and people pay a membership, there's an expectation that you have to create for that membership every month, and that you have to deliver high value. So there's that pressure that's a bit extra compared to how it was before, which is good for me. It makes sure that I create great content, and it keeps me on my toes, but I can see how not everyone would enjoy that pressure. So there's pros and cons to hosting an online community, but for me personally, it's been really positive change. And the courses, what I really like about hosting my online courses is that every time I create a new course, I can create it on a topic that I am super passionate about in that moment. So it never gets boring. If I want to explore more charcoal drawings, I can host a course doing charcoal portraits, which I've done. If I feel like I want to do more sketchbooking and be a bit more free in my art, I can create a course around that. If I want to become more detailed in my art, I want to focus on that, then I can create a course around it. So I can fit it in with something that I personally want to focus on in that moment of time. And that's a really great way to keep it really interesting for me and to keep it really fun. So that's another point that I think is worth mentioning. I'm going to round up this podcast now, so thank you so much for listening. If you have any more questions about an online community, about courses, or about drawing or art in general, please let me know. Don't hesitate to reach out. And I'm going to create a fact sheet with all the materials that I use, the software and the hardware as well, that I use to create my courses and to host my community. So I will make sure I put that as a download in the description. You will be able to find it there. And thank you so much for joining in. It is a pleasure talking to you. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, make sure you leave it all the stars and share it with your friend, your family, your neighbors, everyone, because that really helps me to get found. And I hope to see you soon for our next session. Bye bye.